Welcome, the haunted tales, brave souls, to another chilling journey into the unknown. If you have a thirst for spine-tingling tales of haunted places, you're in the right place. Tonight, we venture into the misty forests, abandoned asylums, and shadowed mansions of Oregon, a state known for its natural beauty but also its dark and haunted past. From restless spirits to eerie whispers in the night, Oregon holds some of the most terrifying paranormal encounters in the country. So dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for the unsettling tales that lie ahead. But remember, sometimes the ghosts follow those who dare to learn their stories. The haunting at Hot Lake Hotel in the heart of Oregon, nestled among the Blue Mountains, stood Hot Lake Hotel, a place with a past as tumultuous as the steam rising from its healing waters. Once a grand resort, then a sanatorium, and later an abandoned ruin, the hotel had seen its fair share of tragedy. Fires, suicides, and the lingering echoes of suffering patients had turned it into a legend. Locals whispered of shadows moving in empty halls, ghostly footsteps echoing through the night, and voices that carried on the wind. Lucas, a documentary filmmaker with a taste for the paranormal, had always been drawn to such places. When he read about the Hot Lake Hotel, he knew he had to see it for himself. He convinced his small team, his cameraman Jason, sound tech Emily, and historian friend Natalie, to join him on a weekend investigation. They arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and violet. The hotel loomed before them, a massive 3-story structure with cracked windows, sagging balconies, and an eerie stillness that seemed to press against them like a living thing. Though the building had been restored in recent years, the weight of its past was undeniable. "Remind me again why we're doing this," Emily muttered, adjusting her sound equipment. "Because this place is cursed," Jason replied, half joking. "And Lucas wants to prove it." Lucas ignored them, pushing open the heavy front doors. They creaked on rusted hinges, and a gust of cold air greeted them, carrying the faint scent of sulfur from the hot springs nearby. Inside, the air was thick with history. The grand lobby, though refurbished, still held traces of its darker days. A piano sat against the far wall, its keys yellowed with age. A massive chandelier hung above them, swaying slightly as though disturbed by an unseen force. "Let's set up," Lucas said, his voice brimming with excitement. They divided into teams. Lucas and Jason would explore the upper floors while Emily and Natalie investigated the old medical wing. The upper floors, Lucas and Jason climbed the staircase, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. The upper levels had once housed wealthy guests, but during the hotel's time as a hospital, they had been converted into patient rooms. Many had died here, victims of disease, depression, and the hotel's infamous suicide balcony. As they passed room 210, Jason froze. "Did you hear that?" Lucas turned, listening. A faint whisper curled through the air, too soft to make out words. He motioned for Jason to keep filming as he cautiously pushed the door open. Inside, the room was empty, save for an old wheelchair positioned in front of the window. Jason panned his camera across the space, focusing on the peeling wallpaper and the rusted medical bed. Then, a soft creak. They both turned sharply. The wheelchair had moved. Jason sucked in a breath. "Dude, tell me you saw that." Lucas nodded, heart pounding. "Keep rolling." The air grew colder. The whispering returned, louder this time. It was a woman's voice, breathy and urgent. "Jump!" Lucas stepped back, shaking his head. "Let's get out of here." As they turned, the door slammed shut behind them. The medical wing, meanwhile, Emily and Natalie moved through the old medical area, where the worst of the suffering had taken place. The walls still bore remnants of the past, faded signs warning of quarantine zones, rusted gurneys pushed against the walls. "God, this place gives me the creeps," Emily whispered, adjusting her microphone. Natalie ran a hand along an old hospital bed, lost in thought. "You know, during its time as a sanatorium, they treated burn victims here after a fire destroyed part of the hotel. Some didn't survive." As if in response, a low moan echoed through the corridor. Emily's head snapped up. "Please tell me you heard that." Natalie nodded, gripping her flashlight. They followed the sound to an old hydrotherapy room, a place where patients were once submerged in hot spring water for treatment. The large therapy tub sat in the center, still filled with dark, murky liquid. Emily frowned. Wait, why is there still water in this? Before Natalie could answer, a ripple disturbed the surface. Then, something rose out. A blackened, skeletal hand broke through the water, reaching toward them. The shape of a man followed, his skin charred and blistered, his mouth locked in a silent scream. Emily and Natalie screamed and stumbled backward as the figure lunged, but as fast as it appeared, it was gone, leaving nothing but eerily still water. Panting, Emily grabbed Natalie's arm. We need to find the guys. Now. The grand finale. The four regrouped in the lobby, all pale and shaken. This place is seriously haunted, Jason said, still gripping his camera. Lucas checked his watch. Midnight. Let's do one last session, he suggested. We sit in the lobby, ask questions, and see if we get anything on EVP. They gathered around the old piano, placing their recorder on top. Is anyone here with us? Lucas asked. Silence. Then, a single piano key pressed down on its own. Emily let out a shaky breath. Who are you? The air grew thick, heavy with an unseen presence. Then the recorder crackled to life. A voice, distorted, guttural. Help me! Suddenly, the chandelier above them began to sway violently. The lights flickered. The walls groaned as if the entire hotel were breathing. Then, the grand piano lurched forward, crashing onto its side. That was enough. Run! Lucas shouted. They sprinted for the exit, flinging open the heavy doors and tumbling onto the front lawn. The night air was cold against their skin, but they didn't care. They were alive. From inside the hotel, a single window on the third floor glowed. A figure, a woman in white, stood there, watching them. Then, she vanished. The next morning, they reviewed their footage. The EVP recording was crystal clear. The voice had said something more. Not just, help me. It had whispered, you shouldn't have come. Lucas shut off the tape. They never returned to Hot Lake Hotel. But the ghosts, they never left. The Wolf Creek in the storm raged through the Oregon wilderness, its howling winds rattling the ancient windows of the Wolf Creek Inn. Built in the late 1800s, the old roadside inn had once been a resting stop for weary travelers on their way to California. Now, it stood like a relic from another time, its walls whispering secrets only the dead could hear. Matthew Carter gripped the steering wheel of his rental car, cursing under his breath. The rain was a solid sheet, turning the highway into a blur of slick darkness. His GPS had lost signal miles ago, and his phone battery was on its last breath. He hadn't planned on stopping for the night, but when he saw the flickering neon sign of the Wolf Creek and through the downpour, he didn't hesitate. Vacancy. The parking lot was empty save for a single, ancient truck parked beneath a broken street lamp. Matthew pulled in and cut the engine. As he stepped outside, the cold rain drenched his jacket within seconds. He ran up the steps and pushed open the heavy wooden door. The moment he crossed the threshold, an unnatural stillness settled over him. The dimly lit lobby smelled of aged wood and something faintly metallic. A large fireplace crackled in the corner, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Behind the check-in desk sat a gaunt man with hollow cheeks and deep-set eyes. His name tag read, Gerald. Looks like you're stuck with us for the night, Gerald said, his voice flat and lifeless. Yeah, storm's brutal, Matthew replied, shaking off his jacket. Got any rooms left? Gerald slid a dusty guest book across the counter. Pick one. Matthew scrawled his name and took a brass key labeled Room 6. As he turned to leave, Gerald spoke again. You're the only guest tonight. Keep your door locked. Matthew hesitated, waiting for a grin or some indication the man was joking. There was none. Room 6, the hallway leading to Room 6 was dim, lined with antique paintings. The faces of strangers, travelers from long ago, stared at him as he passed, their oil-painted eyes reflecting the low light. His room was small, with a heavy four-poster bed and a single window overlooking the rain-soaked highway. He locked the door behind him and sighed. A night of rest, then back on the road by sunrise. But the moment he lay down, sleep refused to come. The room felt wrong. The air was heavy, like it carried the weight of something unseen. And then a whisper, faint. Just outside his door. Matthew sat up, heart pounding. He strained to listen. Nothing. Just the wind. He lay back down, but sleep was impossible. The whisper came again. Help me! A chill crawled down his spine. He bolted upright, his pulse hammering. Slowly, he got out of bed and stepped toward the door. He pressed his ear against it. Silence. Then, scratching. Something was on the other side. Clawing. Desperate. Matthew backed away. A sudden bang shook the door. He stumbled against the bed, heart in his throat. For a long time, he just stood there, staring at the door, breath shallow. Then, as suddenly as it started, the noise stopped. The hall was silent. The hallway of echoes. Matthew cracked open the door. The hallway was empty, the sconces flickering weakly. The paintings seemed closer. The faces more defined. Their expressions had changed. His gut told him to leave. But a new sound drifted down the hall. A child. Crying, soft, broken sobs. He stepped into the hallway. The sound led him past the paintings, past the dark wooden doors. At the end of the corridor stood a door slightly ajar. A warm, golden light flickered inside. He pushed it open. It was an old parlor, lined with bookshelves and faded wallpaper. A rocking chair moved slowly by the fireplace, creaking on the wooden floor, but there was no one in it. The crying stopped. Matthew turned to leave, and the door slammed shut. A gust of icy air blew through the room, snuffing out the fire. Darkness swallowed him whole, and then he heard it, breathing, low, ragged. Right behind him. He spun around, and saw her. A woman in a tattered dress. Her eyes were hollow, her mouth stretched wide in a silent scream. Dark veins ran up her pale throat. She reached for him with rotting fingers. Matthew stumbled back, crashing into the bookshelves. A book fell open at his feet. Guest Registry, 1914-1923. His name was in it, written in old ink, as if he had checked in 100 years ago. A breath of cold air curled around his ear. You can't leave! Escape panic surged through him. He bolted for the door, yanking it open. The hallway was different. The wallpaper was peeling, the paintings slashed. Shadows slithered along the floor, stretching toward him. A voice whispered from the walls. You were always here. He ran. The walls seemed to shift, twisting and warping. The hallway stretched endlessly. Then, room 6. He threw himself inside, slamming the door. His breath came in ragged gasps. His reflection in the mirror wasn't his own. It was Gerald's. The gaunt, hollow-eyed man stared back at him. The truth crashed over him. Gerald had checked in long ago. And so had Matthew. The guests never left. They only changed places. A knock at the door. Gerald's voice from the other side. Your turn. The lock clicked open, and the lights went out. The next guest arrives. The storm still raged outside as a new car pulled into the lot. A traveler stepped out, shaking off the rain. The neon sign flickered. New Orleans had always been a city steeped in mystery. The humid air carried stories in its weight, ghostly echoes in the wind that wrapped around the iron-wrought balconies of the French Quarter. But for Claire Montgomery, a travel journalist with a penchant for uncovering the eerie, nothing intrigued her more than Lafayette Cemetery No. 1. The locals warned her, of course. That place ain't just old, it remembers. A woman told her at a cafe, stirring her chicory coffee with deliberate slowness. Ghosts ain't just there for tourists, honey. Some of them, they never left. Claire dismissed it as superstition. Every haunted place had its myths, and she had yet to see real proof. With her camera slung around her neck and her notebook tucked into her bag, she arrived at the cemetery just as the sun dipped low. The sky burned orange, casting jagged shadows through the maze of above-ground tombs. The cemetery, dating back to 1833, was one of the oldest in the city, and its crumbling mausoleums stood like broken teeth in the fading light. She walked deeper into the cemetery, the pathways uneven beneath her boots. The silence was thick, disturbed only by the occasional rustle of wine through the Spanish moss. The marble statues that stood watch over the dead seemed to shift slightly when she wasn't looking. She snapped a few photos, capturing the eerie beauty of the place. A crypt covered in ivy caught her eye, a large, elaborate tomb with faded engravings. The name, Beaumont, was barely legible on the stone. Something about it unsettled her. She traced her fingers along the inscription. 1842, 1867. May the angels guide you home. A whisper brushed against her ear. Claire spun around, her breath catching. No one was there. The cemetery gates had closed long ago, and she was alone. A chill prickled her spine, despite the warm, sticky air. She took another step back from the tomb, her boots scraping against the gravel, and a sound, like something being dragged, echoed from behind it. Her rational mind told her it was just an animal. Maybe a raccoon, a stray cat. But the scrape came again, longer, more deliberate. Her heartbeat thudded as she hesitantly peered around the corner of the tomb. Nothing. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head at her own paranoia. But then, she saw a figure, just beyond the tombs, where the light barely touched out, a woman in a tattered black dress. She stood unnaturally still, her face obscured by the dark veil covering her head. Claire's breath hitched. The woman wasn't moving, yet something about her posture was deeply wrong, as though she were listening too intently to something Claire couldn't hear. "Ma'am?" Claire called, her voice weak. The figure remained silent. Claire's fingers fumbled for her camera, lifting it to her eye. Click! The flash went off, illuminating the figure for a split second, and in that instant, Claire saw her face. Or rather, the lack of it. Beneath the veil, there was nothing but darkness, an endless void where a face should have been. The figure lurched forward. Claire stumbled backward, her pulse hammering. She turned and ran, her boots pounding against the cemetery's uneven ground. The tombs blurred past her as she gasped for breath. Behind her, the whispering began again. But this time, it was all around her. A cacophony of voices, layered over each other, speaking in languages she couldn't understand, growing louder, faster. The ground beneath her seemed to shift as if the cemetery itself was breathing. She skidded to a stop at the entrance gate, gripping the cold iron bars. Locked. She turned, her back pressed against the metal, panting. The cemetery was empty. No veiled woman. No voices. Just rows upon rows of silent, watching tombs. Claire's hands trembled as she reached for her camera, needing to prove to herself that she hadn't imagined it. She flipped through the pictures. The crypt, the trees, the pathways, and then the last photo. Her breath caught. The woman was there, but this time she was closer, standing right behind Claire. Oregon's beauty is undeniable, but beneath its breathtaking landscapes lie stories of sorrow, tragedy, and spirits that refuse to rest. Whether it's a haunted mansion, a forgotten tunnel, or a cursed graveyard, the ghosts of Oregon remind us that some history refuses to stay buried. So tell me, dear viewers, do you dare visit any of these haunted places? Have you ever encountered something beyond the veil? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the haunted corners of Oregon, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another chilling tale. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, you never know what's lurking in the dark. Sweet dreams.